season at a brand new track. And the boys are back, the biggest names in IndyCar. The gang's in Miami, and IndyCar is ready to race. This is Paul Page. Welcome as IndyCar is ready to start their season as Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami. Let's begin with Jack Arute, who is down on the starter stand.
And Paul, in just a couple of moments, Jim Swintal, the chief starter, he'll wave this green flag for the start of the 1996 season. But things have not gone according to plan. See, we were supposed to qualify yesterday, but inclement weather forced the postponement of qualifying until 3 hours ago. Made a lot of tough decisions for many of the competitors, but the man that came out on top, Gary Gerald, was no surprise.
Indeed, and right now, Jack, he slides from us and steps into the cockpit for the first time. Paul Tracy is the man on the pole in what has been a very hectic day for Team Penske already. He snugs down into the cockpit. No opportunity now for final words as they'll make sure that everything is connected. The radios, the belts, they'll engage the steering wheel last, and then he is in his office ready to go to work, kicking off a brand new year. He thinks that never before has he had a better opportunity to win a PPG IndyCar World Championship. He's been consistently fast in testing. He's been the fastest in every practice session. Here he is now, starting from the pole position. The primary concern, it may be one of reliability. Will everything hold together for the race distance? Those are just some of the thoughts going through the mind right now of young Paul Tracy. He starts from the #1 position. Paul?
Well, in just a few minutes, the call will go out to command the engines in 27 Indy cars to life as they are ready to begin a season-long 3,689-mile odyssey that ends up by determining the PPG IndyCar World Champion. Now, this year's schedule begins with 2 brand new ovals here at this magnificent facility at Homestead, and then in 2 weeks, we're off to Rio de Janeiro, and we'll race on an oval there. Now, both of those races will be right here on ABC Sports, as well as 10 other IndyCar races in the schedule. The remaining races will be covered by ESPN, and that will include, on the Memorial Day weekend, the US 500. Now, most of the drivers in the field here today are planning to race on Memorial Weekend at Michigan International in the US 500 and not at the Indianapolis 500. And who are these drivers? Well, to my mind, they are the best in the world, certainly the most versatile. They race on everything from a super speedway down to a natural terrain road course, and they include the short tracks. And when you consider the starting lineup here today, well, the teams alone, of the 19 teams represented, 12 of them have had IndyCar wins. Of the 27 drivers represented here, 10 of them have had IndyCar wins, and 4 of the drivers in this field are IndyCar champions. So, Danny Sullivan, the fight for the championship is just ready to go.
Well, that's right, Paul, but when everybody shows up at a track, they want to win that race, the one right here in Homestead, Florida. But the smart guys, the guys that are really going to be the champions at the end of the years, are the guys that are thinking championship, and they want to come away from here with the most points they can. Remember, the great Dale Earnhardt said at Daytona, he said, I want to win this race, but the championship is the most important thing. And that's what they're going to be thinking about today.
The stands are full here, and we are ready to go racing. The very first race of the IndyCar season at Homestead, the only track with a water ski course out in the center of the track. We'll be right back. Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami at Homestead, Florida, just south of Greater Miami. As always, in the beginning of the season, it brings about new teams, new drivers, and new sponsors to IndyCar racing. Let's take a look at some of these changes. Jacques Villeneuve, the youngest IndyCar champion ever, has left to find fortunes in Formula One. In 1995, Paul Tracy was with Newman Haas, where he did find some victories. But now, he is back at Penske Racing, under the guidance of Roger Penske. Christian Fittipaldi, who drove for Walker last year, is now at Newman Haas. And he will be the teammate to Michael Andretti. Scott Goodyear has rejoined Walker Racing. Brian Herta is now teammate to Bobby Rahal. Mark Blundell from Formula One is at Pac West. And then there are some new teams this year with some old faces. Emerson Fittipaldi is part of the Hogan Penske team. Dan Gurney is back with Toyota Power and All-American Racers. And Dave Letterman is now a partner with Bobby Rahal.
And Paul, another of those new faces is the youngster. He's only 20 years old, Greg Moore from Canada, the Indy Lights champion who dominated the series last year, winning 10 of 12. He's been so very impressive in early testing. He starts today outside in row 3. We're just seconds away from the command for you to start an engine for your first IndyCar race. Greg, what, any special emotions or feelings right now, or concerns?
Well, I just got to say I'm really nervous right now, but as soon as the engine starts, it's all same thing, and you don't win 10 or 12 races without having some skills, so I think that we'll be looking fine by the end of the race.
We wish you certainly great success. There's no doubt about it. This guy is a guy to keep an eye on. He'll start in car number 99 in row 3.
He's nervous. You sure can't tell anything about it. So calm down there. There they are. They are out, ready. The 27 cars on the starting grid on the main straightaway here at this track. A beautifully put together facility. And they're ready to go.
Your engine.
As the command rings out and the engines fire in 27 Indy cars. Race of last season at Laguna Seca over the shoulder of Robbie Gordon, as we're set to go racing here. The field set on the main straightaway. What's going through each of these drivers' minds right now? Well, one of the thoughts certainly would be that as of this moment, I have as good a shot at the championship as anybody else in the starting field. So let's go down now. Jack Arute is with Ralph Sanchez.
Paul, just a couple of years ago, a hurricane tore through the South Florida area, and specifically in Homestead, devastated. From those ruins, a man named Ralph Sanchez had an idea that he'd been pursuing for quite some time, to build a world-class facility. And now you've given birth to it. In this race, the first IndyCar race of a long IndyCar tenure that you've had, Ralph, your feelings?
Jack, this is a dream come true. My first dream was to build a facility. The second one was to bring the Indy cars on an oval to South Florida. And I feel it's incredible, the feeling that I have.
Paul, it's a lot like a birthday, and he certainly is celebrating.
All right, as the field now begins to roll away, let's take a look at the starting grid on the pole. Paul Tracy earning his 8th career pole in his return to Team Penske. And Gil de Ferran, who won that last race last year, starts second today. In the second row, Jimmy Vasser was the fastest here in spring training. And Scott Pruitt, his only career win came on an oval at Michigan. The third row, Bobby Rahal, the only active 3-time driver and 3-time champion. And Greg Moore, last year's Indy Lights champion and rookie here. Robbie Gordon is on the inside of row 4. His first 2 career victories came last year on an oval. And Mauricio Gugelmin, Andre Ribeiro, and Michael Andretti, the 1991 IndyCar champion. Brian Herta and Emerson Fittipaldi, the 1989 champion. Al Unser Jr., the 90 Series champion, and rookie from Formula One, Alex Zanardi. Christian Fittipaldi, who begins his second season as Michael Andretti's teammate now, and Adrian Fernandez. Raul Boesel driving now for Green, the team that won last year's championship, and Stefan Johansson from Formula One, Mark Blundell, and Eddie Lawson. Carlos Guerrero and Scott Goodyear now back with Walker Racing. Hiro Matsushita and Marco Greco. Rookie Jeff Krosnoff and Roberto Moreno, a Brazilian back after a 9-year layoff. And alone in the last row, Juan Manuel Fangio. Parker Johnstone was scheduled to start, but he was in an accident in practice, and during the accident was unconscious. And they have a rule, that happens, you can't race on the same weekend. So we're ready here at Homestead. And here is Greg Moore in, and obviously with a problem of some sort.
Yeah, well, did you see they left the little bib that goes over the front wings? It's just a protector. They left that on. That's probably the crew's nervousness, too, at the first race. They just came in and peeled it off. He'll be right back up in the spot.
Well, that explains the first race nervousness of a lot of people. Here is the track, 1.53-mile oval. And here are the passing areas on this oval, going into 1, going into 3. And that means the trouble zones are right out of there. So that's the layout here. And we are ready to go now as they roll around and get set for the start of this race, the beginning of the season. Today's field, well, there's the chassis, the engines, and that tire battle. It's going to make for one terrific battle as we start off this season. And today's stories, well, we're going to watch those tires, the new packages, all these new combinations, and how are the rookies going to perform, because it's a great crop of rookies. Now, Danny Sullivan, what about running in traffic here?
Well, this, of course, is a new track for everybody. Nobody's really raced out here. They've been here for spring training. They've driven down here, but not a lot in traffic. They took away about 28% of the downforce. A lot of that came back in the tires, but those cars are going to be a little bit edgy with no downforce when they start running in traffic, 3, 4, 5, you know, together in a bunch, and it's going to be a little tricky. They're all going to have to kind of feel it out and see what the car does at the beginning of the race. Down to you, Jack.
Well, Danny, if there is that concern, maybe IndyCar has addressed it, because for the first time, all of the crews have a spotter high atop the grandstand. Now, what that spotter will do is not what you see in NASCAR races. His role is strictly to try and let a driver know if there's trouble ahead. Passing is so difficult here, they want all the help they can. They're going to use it throughout the season and assess the situation as the season progresses. Gary?
Jack, on our pre-race show, we talked about a little edge that the Jim Hall Racing team, the Pennzoil team behind Gilles de Ferran, may have in pit stop competition today. Here's the way it works. They have advanced their fuel tank by 10 inches. They've shortened their primary fueling hose by 10 inches. It doesn't sound like much, but it speeds up the flow of precious fuel out of this tank into the race car. If you can gain a second here in the pits by doing that, you've gained 100 yards on the racetrack. It's tough to pass, as Danny was just saying. If you can gain 1-2 seconds in here, it could be the difference between winning this race, maybe finishing on the podium, or being way back in the middle of the pack. Jim Hall's innovative crew coming through once again. They hope they've got an extra edge. Hall?
Well, there in the Toyota pace car is Joe Montana, 4-time Super Bowl quarterback. Now, he has considerable training. He's driving the pace car. He has considerable training in racing, and Wally Dallenbach, the chief steward, who is seated next to him, has also spent quite a bit of time with him. So it's not a casual thing there. Joe Montana knows exactly what he's doing at the wheel of that pace car. Now here's the front row. Paul Tracy on the pole, and then Gilles de Ferran to the outside as we watch them as they begin to set up for the approach down toward the green flag. Off of the final turn here. Very tight at the front row. And we're racing. The season is underway. A spin down in turn 4 at the back of the field. Several cars in trouble, including Mark Blundell there, who has got it back under power and is ready to go. So the yellow is out right here on the start.
And that's Roberto Moreno there. He made contact actually with the wall down there. It looks like Blundell, he just spun and got going, but Moreno looks like he did some damage. It looked like his days were done.
Well, just that quickly, they start and then they slow down as the field regroups. It'll take a few minutes to get Roberto Moreno's car off of the track. And when we come back, we'll see if they can get it going again. It should be terrific. Get Roberto Moreno's car clear of the course. They've just about got that done. That'll give us a chance to look from a couple of views of what happened here. Now they're coming down for the start. Watch up at the back of the field.
Right, you'll see him come in there, and Mark Blundell, he just turns the car down a little bit, just a little bit, and probably stands on the gas at the same time. We have an overcast day. It's cool. He's got cold tires, and he just spins the car. He just loses it right there. He doesn't make contact with anything like Moreno. Don't forget, in Formula One, they use tire warmers. The tires are already warmed up. He's got stone cold tires, and we saw a little bit of this in Indy a couple of years ago on a cold day.
And Moreno's situation doesn't relate to this at all. Blundell was able to get back into the action, but Moreno's spin took him up against the wall, and a totally separate incident. And so as a result, Moreno's out. Mark will stay in. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Paul, a disappointing time for Dale Coyne, who calls the shots and is actually the owner of this team. Did Roberto say anything on the radio after the crash?
He didn't say anything. I know it's a cold morning. We're in Florida wearing jackets, and two cars got sideways, 2 cars spun. So I think it was just a slow start, and I think he just cold tired it and spun a little bit.
With Roberto, the learning curve is very steep. We heard him in the drivers' meeting yesterday asking for a lot of advice. What have you been able to tell him about starts?
You just got to be cautious. I mean, these guys are racers. They want to go out there and get after it. But it's been 10 years since he's been on an oval, so we'll get going. We'll be fine when we get into the summer.
Paul?
All right, Roberto Moreno, who has been out of racing for 9 years, IndyCar racing, 1,000 feet up above the Miami Grand Prix today, flies the Bud 1 airship, bringing you these aerial shots, looking down on the race course and facility here. Well, still under a full course yellow, and they'll go at least one more lap. It will be one more as we go to Gary.
With a lap to go, Jerry Forsyth is the man who calls the shots or owns the team. We met Greg Moore just a few moments ago. He told us how apprehensive or nervous he was before gentlemen starts. Does this yellow flag situation, do you think, help him settle in, or does it compound the problem?
My guess, Gary, would be that it would settle him down somewhat.
Your expectations for this young man, based on not only what he did in Indy Lights last year, but what you've seen in testing thus far?
Well, the team's been extremely pleased with the effort that he's put forth and the team all this past winter. And I believe the young fella has a fantastic future ahead of him.
He said, young fella, 20 years and counting. We wish you well.
Thanks very much.
Paul?
All right, they're ready to come back to a green flag, and they will line up back in the starting order to do that. So that puts Paul Tracy on the inside and Gilles de Ferran on the outside of the front row.
That's something we usually don't see, because it's usually when they're in single file, they go ahead and start it like that, and it's a little bit safer. But this looks like it's going to be another exciting start.
A little more action. Paul Tracy really picks up the pace as he comes off of the corner, surges ahead, and they say no. That was a little too far, Paul. Always a questionable thing, too, though, because those guys accelerating at the back can't always see.
That's right, but also I think something we shouldn't forget is it's the first race of the season. Everybody's anxious. A lot of them are in new teams. Everybody's pumped up. It's a cool day. They want to get that temperature in the tires, so you might have seen that a little bit, anticipating, hoping to get a run down into turn 1.
So actually we have 4 laps into the record book, though all but about 100 feet of those under the yellow flag. The yellow came out immediately upon the start in this first race of the season, as I think everybody's shaking off some of those first race jitters here. Paul Tracy, the pole sitter, bringing them down, and then the incident, 2 separate cars in the back of the field. They'll try to get aligned again and see if we can't get a start now. Again, the acceleration begins. Again, Paul surges a little bit ahead. Not nearly as much this time. We're ready to go. Green flag is out. The chase is on. Tracy leads him into 1, followed by de Ferran.
Little side-by-side racing there with Scott Pruitt.
Jimmy Vasser jumps down into 3rd place. Pruitt is right behind him. Paul Tracy pulls out a lead. These are anxious moments for all of these teams. And we're yellow again. 1 lap under yellow, and then they decide that there's some debris over on the backstretch. So we've got a lap and about 100 yards under green now. Now, one of the problems that has occurred here, this is probably not it, but one of the problems, well, maybe we'll know. Here is Michael Andretti's onboard camera, and that's Gugelmin ahead. He taps with him.
It looked like Gugelmin slowed, and I think that's because the reason he's coming to the pit. But Michael, trying to pull out, clipped the front wing. It looked like just popped the front wing right off the car, or at least the end plate off the front wing.
Michael's right front was where the impact occurred. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
We await, along with the Newman Haas crew, the radio report. As we see now, Gugelmin fly by us after a quick stop. They're waiting to see if Michael must come in. His radio conversation with the crew was that there was contact with Gugelmin. I don't know if there's any damage to the car. I think the crew's probably in the same situation right here. You may have a better look at it than us, Paul.
Well, you know, if we can look at that again, there is a possibility. If you keep an eye, Danny, on the left rear of Gugelmin, it looks like it may break actually before Michael gets there. Like he may have chalked the brakes for a second, but it also may be Michael's tire touching. Hard to tell.
Well, you can see it's actually Michael's nose just hits that tire right there. That's just the contact between the bodywork on Michael's car and Gugelmin's tire. And Maurizio did come into the pits and change the tire. I don't know if he had a problem while he slowed, and that's why Michael went by him so fast. But that's pretty close drafting on the first lap.
Also, as they came to the yellow, Brian Herta surged past Al Unser Jr., and as a result, they are going to throw a penalty when they come back to green flag racing. That's the report that we have right now. So Michael Andretti heads into the pits, and this will give us a better idea of what kind of damage. You called it exactly right, Danny.
Well, I'd like to say something here, too. I think what we're seeing here is a lot of the viewers might be thinking, why is this getting just so hard to get going, the race here? But I think what we're seeing is just first race jitters. Everybody's new positions. Everybody's pumped up. They're thinking about the race and the championship, and we're just seeing a few little mistakes early on.
Well, I think, again, exactly what you said, that so much is on the line in regard to the championship, though you normally don't think about it until you get toward the end of the year. It's on the line right now. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Crew working to remove the damaged nose. They have a spare in position ready to put it on immediately, but this is a time-consuming process at best, even under yellow. You can see the crew members at the front undoing those bolts there and the screws that will let them free up the damaged equipment on the front, and another one ready to go into its place. But boy, must be very frustrating for Michael Andretti. Now they brought the other one back. There seems to be a communication problem here of some sort. Maybe they're going to send him out without a nose so that he doesn't lose a lap. And he stalls it. Oh, man. Throwing things down here. They are so frustrated. The starter comes back. They didn't want him to lose the lap. Here come the safety cars. They go by to his right, not more than 25 yards away. The engine comes to life. Now they may go ahead and just put on the spare nose, but the damage has been done in two senses. First to the nose itself, now the fact that they've lost a lap to the field.
And you're probably thinking that the yellow, for just a glance off the wall and the debris, shouldn't be this long, and it has been extended now with the yellow because it is raining. It's a light rain, a very light rain, but one that will affect the racing. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, we've been plagued by rain showers for the last 2 days, and you may not be able to see it right now, but it is beginning to sprinkle. One of the problems, on a road course, you might see a rain tire go on. But at this point in time, development work by both Goodyear and Firestone has precluded the use of those type of rain tires on an oval track configuration. Now, the word, and if you've been following racing, you and Danny Sullivan and myself, we all know that some of the tire companies have been experimenting with putting grooves on the slicks in hopes that maybe someday we could run in the rain on an oval, but not today in Homestead.
We're back going green. Paul Tracy leads them down. Tracy to Farron, Vassar, Pruitt, Rahal. Rahal, as Gordon tries to make a move. You're on board Robbie Gordon as he just moves past Rahal. And that puts Gordon into 5th place.
You could just see there for a second the raindrops on Robbie Gordon's in-car camera just going across the front of it.
Why is rain so critical at a point like this? You would think that by now the tires would be developed to a point where they could handle it. Is it the compromise with high speed?
It's a high speed, it's the banking, it's the drainage of the track, and they've never traditionally run on an oval track. They'll run a little bit in the rain because the tire is warmed up, the track's going, it won't be a big problem. But right at this moment, if it gets heavier, then they'll have to come in.
Now, here's what we're going to try to add to some of the programming this year as we cover Indy cars. Is the top of your screen, the laps to go, the leader of the race and how much he is leading over 2nd place by, and then down the right side we'll show you the entire field and the interval back from the front. Hopefully this will help keep us all a little better informed as we go through the year and help you keep track of your favorite driver. Still a show of water on the lens there. They wipe it clear, but look how fast it builds up. So they're staying green, but there is moisture.
There is some moisture out there, but those little drops at the moment, Paul, they won't really affect the driver or anything. There's Greg Moore trying to make a move on Robbie Gordon. thought a little better of it.
Well, the cover on the front wing didn't unnerve him too much. It doesn't look like. Scott Pruitt, he runs in 4th place. As we look down the backstretch, back with Robbie Gordon and Greg Moore.
Don't forget these guys at the moment, too. The race is now just started. They're settling in a little bit in the groove, feeling what their car is doing on full tanks and also what it's doing in traffic, because don't forget they haven't run under these conditions with the reduced downforce that the rules brought into play in 1996.
And theoretically, that reduced the downforce substantially, but you know, these engineers, a few turns of the pin, or now I guess the computer-aided design, they get it back. Also, the tires, been a lot of work done on those over the winter.
Well, and don't forget, you not just have the engineers for the cars, you've got the tire engineers, because now with Goodyear and Firestone in the series, they both want to have a little bit better tire. Then the engine manufacturers and the turbo manufacturers, everybody's trying to improve and make their product better.
Al Unser Jr. on the move, started 13th, is now up to 8th, closing on Bobby Rahal.
You know, Al's one of those guys, too, that he's not traditionally a great qualifier, but he is always working on his race setup, and I think you're going to probably see him moving through the pack a little bit. He's got a really good car.
Already the front of the field beginning now to overhaul the back of the field. So you saw DeFerrin and Vassar move out. Pruitt now out and around. Look at Moore almost down to the grass as he challenges. Tries to get inside. Gordon does it. We say this young kid was going to be super.
That was a good move on him, and I think it was set up by Robbie probably being held up a little bit in that traffic. There's Jimmy taking a look at Gilles DeFerrin, seeing if he could get back for 2nd place.
Tracy, DeFerrin, Vassar, Pruitt, then Greg Moore, and then Robbie Gordon. Tracy, though, look at the interval, pulls out 5.8 seconds already. Now, one of the other questions in all of these combinations, now we know the Penske powered by Mercedes works well. Next question is going to be, what about the engine? Mercedes has had some problems. They had an engine go in spring training here, and that was pretty spectacular. And then Al Unser Jr. had some problems here, as did Bobby Rahal. And we are going back yellow, and this is moisture on the track, which we call rain. So it's Paul Tracy has led while we have had green flag here, followed by Gilles DeFerrin, Jimmy Vassar, Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, and Robbie Gordon. We'll be back after this message. A full course yellow here, so let's go down and check in the pits, beginning with Jack.
Well, Paul, one of the fascinating things about IndyCar racing is the stories that oftentimes we don't get a chance to tell you. During practice for Scott Pruitt and his Pat Patrick team, Scott could only muster about 13th fastest time. Then in qualifying today, he set 4th fastest time. Now, what was the difference? You aren't going to believe this, but when he came in after practice, he told his crew that his foot felt as if it was slipping off of the throttle. So a high-tech answer to that: take a piece of adhesive-backed sanding paper and put it right on the throttle. He said now the grip between the foot and the throttle is solid, and it seemed to account for it, his 4th fastest time.
Those little things matter a great deal, don't they?
Well, they do. Driver comfort when you're in a cockpit that small and that tight is critical. And I know not so much in something like that, but I found one year my foot was coming off of the throttle at Phoenix because it was just being pulled away. The pedal was too far away from me, and I couldn't hold it under with all the G-forces when it was taking me around the track. And they discovered that, wait a minute, you're not going around here flat. And they had to fix the throttle.
We're still under yellow for rain, moisture on the track, as they call it here, as we see Jeff Krosnoff making his in and out. You were concerned about a pass earlier on.
Well, some of the stuff that I was noticing early on, like I saw Jimmy Vassar very close to Gilles DeFerrin, like he was going to make a pass. Robbie Gordon, so forth. Greg Moore, they dropped back. I wonder if The rules changes is when they get up there close, if they don't make it, it disturbs the air enough and they have to drop back to settle down the car. And I think that these guys are learning right now what the car is doing in traffic. The other interesting thing here is this rain and this stop and go and the yellow situation is very difficult on the drivers to get their momentum and their flow going and just get into the rhythm of the first race.
On board the nose, Bobby Rahal's car. Let's go to the pits again. Gary Gerald.
Jim Hall, who is the car owner for Gilles de Ferran. Denny Sullivan was just talking about how unsettling it is for a driver in this situation. Is it unsettling for your crew as well when you really don't know what the weather is going to allow you to do in terms of racing?
Well, of course, it's the same for everybody, but it does throw your plans in kind of a turmoil because you got to keep replanning all the time, and that's what we try to do is just keep replanning our position every lap.
How much were you surprised at all by the qualifying effort of your driver, or was it not a surprise that he was able to just jump up there and challenge Tracy in that front row?
Well, we knew the car was good this morning. We'd had a kind of an up and down day yesterday, and we made some decisions based on that. And after the warm-up this morning, we knew the car was good, but we decided to fill it up with fuel and set it up for the race. So we didn't know how good. And we found out during the qualifying run.
You mentioned fuel. We mentioned as this race started that Jim Hall has had so many innovations in racing over the years. A subtle change here in moving the position of your fuel tank, shortening that fuel hose, trying to get a little extra edge in the pits. Have your tests shown that you can gain a considerable amount of time, or are we talking fractions of seconds?
Oh, we're just talking fractions of seconds, and we work on that continuously, too. That's an ongoing process to try to see if we can shorten the fuel stop or improve our time in the pits just to help him a little bit, because it's sometimes easier to pass somebody in the pits than it is on the racetrack.
Thanks, Jim. Paul?
Well, there he is, Gilles de Ferran. As he moves around, we are still under yellow. They're still concerned about the rain. They want to make sure also that there's no dust or other debris on the racetrack. So as we remain under yellow here, we'll come right back. As Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami, we have had 3 different yellow flags, only one for a large incident when Roberto Moreno got into the wall, and that was really only a tap that took him out of the race. And now we're under yellow, 9 laps total under yellow as a result of rain. And Gary, how serious is the rain problem? It's very hard to tell.
Well, I think this is the most irritating kind of rain because it's not really raining and yet it's not dry. And if you look down here, you can see just a fine light mist, but you can see it begins to accumulate. And yes, it is wet. And they have the jet dryers out on the track. And of course, the heat from the tires, it helps keep the line fairly dry. So that's what they're working on. But you look up in the sky and these clouds, you know, last night and this morning, the meteorologists around here were saying 0% chance of any precipitation. Spit it out, Gary. But here we are, and it's spitting down on us. But we've got another story that I think you'll find interesting, Paul. Parker Johnstone, you mentioned yesterday he had an incident, was fast in his practice session, and then ran over a piece of debris, cut a tire, went into the wall hard. Parker, we know that you're okay, but because of a rule that IndyCar has, unable to drive the car, you're trying to do a rain dance down here. Tell us why.
Well, absolutely. If they shut this race off before 50%, they'll have to rerun it sometime later. And hopefully the fine staff at IndyCar will find me fit to drive and we can get back in this thing and be at the front where I think we would be.
How hard is it to be in this position today instead of out there on the track?
Well, it's extremely difficult. I now know what Scott Goodyear has gone through and Robbie Gordon last year at the Marlboro 500 went through, that when you've got a great car underneath you and a great crew that have really sacrificed to get here, to be able to ride your bike up and down the pit lane but not be allowed to drive. First of all, it shows you the professionalism of IndyCar, that Dr. Trammell and his staff, I have 100% confidence in. You have to trust their abilities, and if they say you shouldn't be in the car, you shouldn't. But at the same time, as a race car driver, this is a place that you have to be. We were fortunate that our Angels were working overtime yesterday, kept us safe, and I really need to thank the guys at Chip Ganassi and Chip Ganassi Racing for providing a spare car for us. They were the first people down to make sure I was okay, offered us the full use of their spare car, and that just shows you that no matter how competitive we may be on Sunday afternoon, the sportsmanship and the level of professionalism in the IndyCar paddock, and that's almost unheard of in any other form of sport.
It does make it special. Thank you, Parker. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, we don't have precipitation down this end of pit road. We've simply got rain, but we're also with Chuck Sprague. And Chuck, without giving away any secrets, you guys have been fast right out of the box. Is it chassis, is it motor, or is it a combination?
Well, it's got to be the combination. You know, if you don't have any one piece of the package, it just doesn't play. You know, last year we struggled with some parts and weren't sure where we were wrong, but over the winter we sort of rededicated ourselves to the way we operated, and we went through all our options over the winter and eliminated the ones that didn't look right. And you know, the chemistry's been good. You know, I haven't worked with Paul before, but most of the guys have, and it just feels good.
What about the fact that we've got such a disjointed start to this race, not due to anything other than Mother Nature? Does it create a difficult situation for driver and crew to get in a rhythm?
Yeah, it's always tough to turn it off and turn it on and turn it off and turn it on. You know, we'd like to be putting a great show on all the time for the fans. I mean, that's the important thing. But, you know, of course, in our case, we feel good about this race and we'd like to get on with it.
Well, Paul, they like to put on a show for the fans, but they also like to know what's going on. They have their telemetry right on their computer monitor, but look over on the right-hand side. They also have onboard cameras and the ABC telecast, so Chuck Sprague and the crew, they don't have to move and see what's going on.
I'll tell you what, you talk about high tech, you got ABC there, you've got it all. In the front of the field, as we'll take a look down through the top positions in this field, what I find interesting is that first place is a Mercedes, then two Hondas, and then a Ford Cosworth. There's the order. We are under yellow, our third yellow of the day. We hope that it will stop raining shortly here. We'll be right back as Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami. Yellow as a result of the rain here, and you ride on board with Bobby Rahal's car, who I think everybody is now well aware. Dave Letterman, who has been a longtime IndyCar fan, grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, is now part of this team. So it would seem normal that there'll be a top 10 list. Number 10, speeding tickets no longer a problem thanks to special Merritt Parkway testing permit. Number 9, if my car breaks down anywhere in the country, Bobby will personally come out and tow it. 8, empty methanol drums make great pool toys. 7, when I need a pit pass, I only have to suck up to myself. 6, for a change, get to be a part of a team that's not in last place. And number 5, thanks to Tony George, Indy 500 race day traffic jams no longer a problem.
And we've also got number 4, chance to have photo taken with IndyCar hunk and ABC announcer Paul Page.
Whoa, sounds
wait
like
a minute, wait a minute.
Paying me for this.
After number 3, after each race, I get to check Bobby's helmet for hair. Number 2, if Bobby wraps up championship early, I get teammate Brian Herta's ride. And finally, number 1, someone I can talk to about my half shaft.
The top 10 list for Team Rahal / parentheses Letterman this year. Let's go down, meet another owner with Gary Gerald.
I just noticed, Chip, you were watching that top 10 list pretty carefully there. I think you escaped any darts. Tell us about what you're calling opportunities with your team this year. Several significant changes starting with the Honda power plant and Firestone tires.
Well, no question, Gary. You know, we made an engine change. I had to make a business decision. I have a responsibility, obviously, to target my major sponsor. I wanted to make sure that we had the most competitive equipment available. I made a business decision. We went to the Honda engine. We went to the Firestone tires. So far in winter testing, it's been paying off. We're very happy with how our winter testing is going. We're just waiting to get the race season underway here, and you know, both guys are feeling pretty good right now.
Tell us about Jimmy's comments in relationship to the condition of the track surface right now as you wait for an opportunity to put the hammer down again.
Well, they've just been going up and down the line, and all the drivers are saying pretty much it's ready to go. It's dry out on the racing surface. As you can see, it's very little dampness in the pit lane here. They're both ready to go, basically.
You have to be as excited as anybody when a brand new season rolls around and these opportunities finally get a chance to be proven out. Your emotions on race day number 1 of a brand new season.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been quite a start to the first day of the season since we qualified this morning. For those viewers out there that don't know, we got rained out yesterday, and it's been quite a hectic day around here.
All right, thanks, Chip. Jack?
Gary, just after we interviewed Chuck Sprague, one of the pilots for Team Penske's aircraft came by, and he had checked not only with flight service, not only with radar, but also with some of the pilots. Now I'm not a weatherman, I'm not a meteorologist, but I can kind of put it in layman's terms. The overcast sky here has created what the pilot was calling low pressure pockets. And what that was doing was almost stationary here in the Homestead area. And while the radar may show that heavy precipitation is off to the east of us, these low pressure pockets are what's creating these slight sprinkles. And with the direction of the wind, according to the pilots, it doesn't look like it's going to go away. Now, it's not raining hard enough to literally stop the cars, but it's not raining less enough to be able to go back to high-speed racing. Now, Jimmy Vasser reported to Chip Ganassi that the racing track itself is in good shape, but here's what Chip didn't tell you. Part of the problem, if you look in the corners, is there are sections of the track that are yellow, painted with yellow paint. That's to keep drivers from driving down in that area. Although IndyCar has said in many cases, if you have to, in isolated instances, you can go down into that yellow area. Only one problem. When you put the slick tire down there, it's like sliding on ice. Could be one of the major reasons why we haven't gone back to green.
Well, Jack, I think you're right. You're not a weatherman. Keep your job in the pits. But rain very much a problem here today, and we will await a decision to see what they're going to do. We'll be back after this message. Homestead, you can see that the red flag has just been displayed at the starter's stand. Still rain a problem. We have here with us in the booth, just a few feet down from race control, Dennis Swan, who is the chief steward designate for the series, meaning that he'll take Wally Dallenbach's job next year in the series. But you're also constantly part of the process that figures out how to run these races and how to do them safely. Safety is a consideration here. What's the judgment? Why this red flag?
What has happened is we threw the yellow because we went below what we considered a safe standard. We can monitor the drivers and that sort of thing, plus our safety team is out there. We threw the yellow to get everything under control, and then we've been monitoring it, and we kept the track dry with our blowers, but we couldn't go green. So we elected to pull a red flag. We understand by our weather radar that we're going to be clear in about 15, maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll go green again, so we get a good race in.
And what will be then the rule for the restart? Line up in order that they were under the red flag?
Yes, they'll go out in single file order.
Makes for a long and hard day for you guys, doesn't it?
Yes, long, hard day for the spectators and everyone.
Well, the spectators are sticking with us as the crews come in now to the pit area and the teams out ready for their cars to approach. Will they be permitted to work on them or refuel them? What's the rule there?
Yes, our red flag procedure is the cars can come in and they can do all normal maintenance that we normally perform in a pit stop. And when we get ready to grid the cars, they'll go out and we'll just grid and go in single file order in the order that they're in right now.
All right, Dennis Swan, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As we take a look down on Robbie Gordon's car in the pits, and they're going to top it off with fuel, make sure that it has all the fuel it can, and then of course they'll shut it down. And at that point, it gets to be anybody's guess. Jack Arute?
Well, Paul, before the red flag came out, Derek Walker, and you know he likes to scheme, he likes to plan. We understand that you had your pencil out. You were trying to see just how many caution laps it would take to make this a one-stop race. Where did your pencil come up with?
Yeah, well, we were just looking to see what might turn up, but we're still a long way off from that yet, unfortunately. So looks like this will blow through and we'll get racing again shortly.
What is the attitude when you come back from a red flag? Any concerns that you might have? You top the tank off, you go back. Is there anything that you will be concerned about?
No, actually, it can help you quite a bit, because if you wanted to make a change, then you can do what you'd normally do under the race conditions. You can do it under this red flag. So it gives you a chance to, you know, get the car a little bit closer. But the car's running pretty good, really, so we're not really got much to do. We'll just wait it out.
One of the things about Derek Walker is you really coach your driver, Robbie Gordon. If we've monitored your radios in the past, now that you've got the opportunity 35 or 34 laps into this race to literally walk over there and talk to him, what kind of debriefing session will take place?
Well, we talked quite a bit under the yellow, so there's not a lot left. We've hardly got the race underway, so we're pretty well ready.
Gary Gerald, I cannot believe that Derek Walker would never have a little bit left.
Well, I think he may be just setting you up there, Jack. You never know. Here's Michael Andretti, who has just climbed out of his car. And Michael, this one started out on the opening lap. Some kind of contact. Was it Mauricio Gugelmin and you that got together? Can you tell us or recreate what happened?
Well, I had a good start. I had a good run on him coming off of 2. And as I went to slingshot him, he blocked me. He did a quick left-hand turn with him by himself. And when I was starting to pull out, I hit him because I didn't expect him to do that quick of a movement, and it's a shame because the car's running really well. I mean, the car's capable of winning the race, and you know, now starting a lap down is just about impossible.
That business in the pits when they were trying to replace the nose, it looked like you were going to try to stay on the same lap and go out without a nose, and then the car stalled, and that really compounded the situation.
Well, it didn't, because I think it probably was a blessing in disguise because it went green that lap. So had I gone out and then come in, everybody would have had a run on me. So I think it actually worked out better that I stalled it.
How do you deal with this, the emotion, the disappointment, because everybody's so jacked up and ready to go at the start of a brand new season?
It's a killer, you know. I mean, we felt really good about the race, and it's tough.
I don't know. There seems to be some kind of a problem here, and I'm not sure just what it is. Michael, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully things get better as this day progresses.
Well, Michael Andretti, who by stalling it thinks it may have actually helped him. Obviously, this is one of the guys that will be helped as a result of the rain, because they'll have a full opportunity to look at that front wing, make sure that everything is right there. We are under red flag. They've stopped the race with 34 laps in the record book here in Homestead. Like weather here at the Toyota Grand Prix of Miami. The cars, some of them covered with umbrellas, others with tarpaulins as they are in the pits, and they're taking it easy. You can see the shot from the Bud Blip. Well, it looks just fine, but there's just enough of a mist falling to keep the track closed, and hence the red flag at lap 34. 7 laps of green flag racing in the books. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, for Paul Tracy, believe me, folks, this is not where he wants to be right now. This mist is really disrupting your game plan.
Well, it is. It's disappointing, but, you know, after last year not leading very much, I was happy to just be out there leading the race. So, you know, we know we got a good car, and, you know, the mist is upsetting our game plan, obviously, but, you know, hopefully we'll get it in and get back out there and start getting after it.
Let's talk about Paul Tracy, the 1996 version. You have really, we heard from Chuck Sprague, Team Penske has rededicated themselves, but since you came back on board, you've rededicated yourself as well.
Well, I think I've really worked hard over the winter in testing and in, you know, training myself, getting ready, and I've put in what I had to do every single day, training, and when I was at the track testing. So been motivated all winter, not really taking any time off. So, I mean, it's almost like the season didn't end. I'm just in a better situation.
Well, he's worked out, but also one of the things that Team Penske has always said is what a great tester this guy is, and it seems to show in the early going. And one of the things is he brings a bicycle to every race, not just for a mode of transportation, but to keep you firm and fit.
Well, I ride before the sessions on my bike on rollers like the road racers do, just to get warm and get my heart rate up, and just gets the blood moving and lets me clear my head a little bit. So now I'm getting cold, so might have to bring it out here.
Gary?
Well, Jack, one man who's elected to stay in the cockpit of his car is Mauricio Gugelmin. We should point out that when we were talking with Michael Andretti a couple of moments ago, someone came down and behind our back, we couldn't tell. We're unhappy the fact that we were talking to Michael about an incident and what had been heard. So obviously, Mauricio, we want to hear from you, your side of this situation, because Michael looked like he was trying to lay blame at your doorstep on that first lap contact.
Well, I'm not surprised with that. He has done that in the past. The problem is I came out of 2. Next thing, I just feel a big bang on the back of my car. He just ran on my back, and the way I understand is on his camera. He has a in-car camera. You can see that. Just hit so hard, and I'm surprised I still got 4 wheels in the car.
There was no damage apparently or anything. Was your car handling in the little opportunity you had to run under green flag conditions after that?
Well, they had a good look, and the suspension seems to be all right. He ripped his nose off, and to do that, you got to hit you pretty hard, and that came from the back. So I just don't know. Maybe he can't see properly.
How big of a setback having to make that pit stop to assess to see if damage and the time that you lost, how may that all factor in, considering now the weather delays and everything? Tough?
Now it's just a waiting game. I just don't know what's going to happen, but we're ready for it.
All right, Mauricio. Hopefully it gets to be a smoother, safer day, and we'll all get to go racing here shortly.
Thank you.
Mauricio Gugelmin, he sits in the cockpit, Jack.
Well, Gary, some drivers, as you say, don't like to get out of the cockpit. One man that is really a creature of habit is Bobby Rahal. Bobby is still strapped in, just taking a little bit of cover from the precipitation. But one of the things that Bobby is working with, too, is you can see his crew member over there has some spare what we call tearaways. Now, those are clear plastic pieces that go across the front visor of the helmet. Now, those tearaways are literally, as the name implied, torn away as you go through the course of the race. In dry conditions, Danny Sullivan, you know that it's from oil and stuff on the racetrack. But in rain, you can get moisture in between those tearaways. It can create a fog situation, especially when you go back to full-speed racing until the helmet properly vents itself. So for Bobby Rahal, he's got a couple of spares standing by, just in case when we go back to green, they have to pull the ones he's got on the helmet off and put new ones on.
Well, there's an interesting aspect of the delay. And I'll tell you what, having had that happen myself at a few times, you let your breath out there and everything fogs and suddenly you can't see. Well, I've only done it about 30 miles an hour. Can you imagine what it's like at these velocities? IndyCar, they are talking to the weather service, trying to ascertain exactly what the situation is, so they'll stay in very close touch with them. We are under red flag. We had 3 yellow flags, 27 laps of yellow and 7 laps of green. Race is stopped for the moment, so we're a bit stuttered here at the start of the IndyCar season.
How he was getting a little bit chilly. We saw just before we went to break Bobby Rahal not getting out of his car. Same can be said for Eddie Lawson. You walk up and down pit road and there's varying decisions being made, but one of the key things that determines this, is Danny Sullivan be the first to tell you, is once you've gotten your heart rate up, you've begun to perspire just a little bit. Sometimes you're better off to stay literally strapped in the cockpit so that you don't begin to chill. We're not talking about hypothermia here. We're just talking about getting a slight chill. You can keep that body heat contained inside the tub of the race car, and as it looks now with the wind kicking up, the temperature down here trackside has indeed dropped. So that what happens there, as Danny Sullivan could tell you, is you want to try and control the heat, the body heat, as much as possible. In fact, let's check in with Danny and see what he thinks.
Well, Jack, you're exactly right. The big thing is you've started to sweat, you worked up the temperature, your body's warm, everything. You're inside that suit. Most of those guys are wearing about 3 to 5 layers of suit. It works like the reverse of a wetsuit. It kind of keeps you cool when you need to in the hot sun. But when it's the other way, you got that chill going. Now you're not doing anything. You're stationary. You're sitting in that car. Your temperature's coming down. You're going to start to chill, a little bit of hypothermia. And those guys are sitting in the car doing 2 things, trying to stay warm and focused. They get out of that car and they take their helmet off. People are talking to them. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not good. They want to stay focused and stay warm.
So all of the cars in the pit, some drivers in the cockpit still, which certainly gives all of us a sense that they may get going as soon as they can. But IndyCar, again, their officials staying in contact with the weather service here, and in fact with some pilots that are operating in the area. We got probably pretty good information here. We're right off the end of the runway at the Homestead Air Force Base here, and you can bet that they've got some great weather information. Now they are indicating to us that the weather condition that was affecting the stop of the race has in fact passed. And they are going to pass the word up and down the pits to the drivers to get in their cars if they are not already, and get ready to regrid the cars so that we can restart the race. Let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerald.
Gilles de Ferran, who started in the front row, I understand that this red flag actually helps your crew because you had a little bit of a battery problem that was creating a partial engine misfire. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a little bit of electrical misfire, and but it's all fixed up now.
Everything is fixed up. Tell us about the conditions. You only had 6-7 laps of green. Very difficult to get a feel of this track?
Yeah, very slippery, and you know, I think your car took the right decision to start the race because it was getting pretty dangerous out there.
Paul Tracy has seemingly opened up a sizable advantage. Have you got enough muscle to be able to challenge him before this day is over and you get to go back to green?
Now that I'm firing on all cylinders, I hope so.
That might explain why. We wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're being told roughly 6 to 8 minutes perhaps down here, so the drivers are on a loose standby to get back to the cockpits of their cars.
All right, so there is Bobby Rahal as he sits in the cockpit of his car, and they get ready to bring the leading car out and regrid all of these cars. So very shortly, we hope to go back to racing here in the first race of the IndyCar season. As they all sit prepared to go, we'll come back here, hopefully racing after these messages. now until they're going to roll the cars out, and they'll be under yellow for a little bit, and it'll be fourth time by before they actually go back to green flag racing. One more question for you, Danny. Mechanically in these cars, the fact that they've settled, they cooled down, can that be a problem on trying to get them restarted and get back into the action?
No, there won't be any problem with that. The only thing they'll be concerned about now is when they go back out under that pace car and under the yellow is getting those tires up to temperature so that when that green flag comes out that they can get on it and maybe make a move on a car in front of them or just safely get through the corner.
All right. Well, what about that great young rookie, Jack?
Well, Paul, believe it or not, this young man is only 20 years old. He is driving the car that actually did so well last year for Jacques Villeneuve, who went on to win the PPG IndyCar Championship. Greg Moore, your impressions, at least 35 laps into your first IndyCar race.
Well, so far it's gone pretty well. You know, the Player Sports Size car is running really, really strong, and we're moving up, so that's a good sign.
Well, they've just given the signal, and Greg's going to have to fire his engine. The crews are getting ready. They're going to warm up the cars, bring them up to temperature, and then they'll begin to pull off. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Suddenly, after all of that inactivity, we're inundated with activity. We're out here on the grid. Emerson Fittipaldi being fitted, the steering wheel about to be buttoned into place. Right over here, Juan Manuel Fangio, you can hear that Toyota power plant cranking it up again and getting some warm. Here's Brian Herta over here. He's already fired up. He indicates that he's ready. Hiro Matsushita stands over here on this side. Scandia Racing, his new team this year, nodding approval to his crewman. We've got one more getting ready to fire up here. This would be Andre Ribeiro, who won on the oval last year at Loudon, New Hampshire. They're waiting. Everybody getting pumped and psyched all over again. It looks like we're going to get ready to do it, Jack.
Well, Gary, for Robbie Gordon, the first thing they had to do, clean the mirrors, clean the visor. He began to check, make sure that the belts were nice and tight, and now he gives the thumbs up signal. You can hear them. They're beginning to use the electric starter behind us. Robbie, it looks like it's time to go back to work.
We're ready to go back racing. Hopefully it'll stay green the rest of the way.
Now you can see that the pulse has begun to quicken. He was nice and calm, but now the chest is heaving a lot more, guys.
I'll tell you what, you guys have me pumped up for the restart on this thing. Whole new race now. We're talking, what, 150 miles, 100 laps?
100 laps. They're going to do a 150-mile sprint, and all that happened before, except for probably Michael and a couple of guys in different positions, doesn't count.
So what's that, one stop dead on the exact lap?
One stop, exactly.
All right, the pace car, Toyota Supra, now begins to roll away. Paul Tracy and Jill DeFerrin follow him out. And take a look at those tires.
Yeah, they're going out on stickers. Paul's very confident that he can get those tires scrubbed in by the time that they go green, and everybody is on full tanks.
All right, let's take a look at how they stand right now. This is how they're lined up. Coming back to a green flag, and we'll have 4 laps under yellow. Tracy DeFerrin, Vassar, Pruitt, Greg Moore, and Robbie Gordon, followed by Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Jr., Andre Ribeiro, Brian Herta, Emerson Fittipaldi, Alex Zanardi. We'll go through now the entire field as they are lined up here. And the situation is, this is now the start of lap 35, and they will go 4 laps under the yellow flag, and then they will green flag them. That is, of course, assuming that everything is okay, that the teams report back. And this is one of the good things that IndyCar does with their officials and their teams, is they'll ask the drivers to report on the condition of the surface, make sure everything is right. That'll in turn then be relayed off to the IndyCar officials, and if everything's okay, we'll go green flag racing. But the tires are going to be interesting, and I think that's a bold move by Tracy to put on sticker tires and hope he gets them warmed up.
Well, they are going to do 4 laps. He is in the front of the field. He's very confident right now. The car is running good. He doesn't have to concern himself too much with traffic. The only difference is they ran 4 laps in qualifying, but all those laps were at speed. So he had his tires up to temperature. When you're only doing about 80, 85 miles an hour behind a pace car, it's a lot tougher.
Look back in the field. Brian Herta is in the 5th place as they'll come back to green. Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we've documented that most teams took on fuel and tires, but for Brian Herta, his Rahal team took on 4 tires, fuel, and 2 aspirin. Yeah, that's right. I said 2 aspirin. I guess Brian has been suffering from some arm pain, took advantage of the delay to get out of the car, grab some liquid, down the 2 aspirin, and try and get some relief from that sore arm. He's going to need it because he's going to be back up to full song in a couple of laps, having to go left. Gary?
Jack, we're back in underneath the suites in one of the garage areas, and here's one of the monitors that you find in every garage. You can get timing and scoring, you can get racetrack activity, you can get weather information. In this instance, it's weather information. All that green lurking right off the coast of South Florida, that's been the nemesis thus far. Everybody's hoping that it's moving to the right of the screen, to the east, that it won't back up and come toward us to the west. If it backs up, well, we'll probably have to run through this same drill all over again. But everybody's confident it's going in the other direction. Let's keep the fingers crossed.
Gary, don't even talk about the R word. We've had plenty of it today. But, you know, that's one of the great details that Ralph Sanchez, when he put this track together, obviously did a lot of research. And having that monitor with scoring and even some stationary track surveillance cameras that look at the track itself so the teams can keep track of everything that's going on right from their garage, and that's only like 15 feet from their pits.
Well, he has done a great job, and if I'm right, I think this thing is built. There's water only about 5 or 6 feet below us right now.
And that's supposed to be good news for me?
No, it's not supposed to be good news for you.
We were, of course, not that far from the Florida Keys, Key Largo, and all the dive areas here. I thought you were going to lead into something in that. On board now, as we are still under yellow, trying to get tire temperatures up, ready to go back to green flag. Great view from Robbie Gordon's car, sitting out there on the edge of the wing itself and looking over the tire. Can you tell anything looking at a tire like that, Danny? Can you see things from your rearview mirror?
You can see the tire. The only thing you'll ever notice is if the tire is going soft, you'll see it'll get very low when you're running at speed right in the middle area. But at the moment, he's got no problems, and you won't really see much of that on the oval. And the only other thing you might spot is if it's starting to grain, it'll change colors a little bit. But the weaving that you see him doing back and forth like that, they're trying to scrub in the temperature to get it across evenly across the tire. So when he goes into that corner, that left side's working as good as the right side.
As we wait for green, let's go back to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, remember when the red first came out, we talked to Derek Walker, asked him if he was going to put his pencil to the paper and try and make this a one-stop race. Either people that were monitoring us or they began to put the pencil as well, because since these cars have refired, a lot of radio chatter amongst all the teams as to what boost to run the initial laps at. Reason being, many of them are at least trying to look at the possibility of this becoming a one-stop race. It would be tough. It would be difficult. And I think, Danny Sullivan, it would be predicated on the number of caution laps that are run at this point.
Well, absolutely.
Here's what's concerning me, though. We're ready to go back green. Paul Tracy's labels were still on the tires as he comes off of this corner. So we keep a close eye on Tracy, and they are green. We're racing again. Everybody off the corner nice and clean. Tires working fine through 1 and 2.
Doesn't seem like those labels were affecting him at all.
Quite a group coming through the corner now. Everybody looks for racing room around Brian Herta. And Paul Tracy does exactly what he did before. He is able to pull out on the second place car. To Farron, Vassar. Again, we'll give you the intervals, the laps to go. 1.53 miles around. There's Jimmy. He said he was going to try to move on to Farron, and he's gonna.
Of course, both of those being Honda powered, they're probably pretty equal on their power plants. Don't forget, too, that these cars right at this moment are probably the best they're ever going to feel. They've got brand new tires on there. Everything's just come up to temperature. For these next 3 or 4 or 5 laps, these cars are going to feel great to them.
So Jimmy Vassar in pursuit of second place, Jill DeFerrin. DeFerrin over on the backstretch, moves into 3. Cross the chute into 4. There's Vassar right there. Pruitt, of course, is right there as well. Here is Greg Moore leading Robbie Gordon, Bobby Rahal, and Al Unser Jr. Started 13th, little Al did. He's up in 8th. Andre Ribeiro is 9th. Riding on board, Robbie Gordon.
Hear that noise right in there in the corner? He just had to breathe it just a little bit.
Robbie Gordon in pursuit of Greg Moore. I'll tell you what, everyone has said it. We'll say it again. Keep your eyes on that young man, the number 99 car there. But that's the great thing about the way the series operates right now, is not only these great rookies, but all the big names, say the young guns like Gordon, the veterans like Unser and Andretti, Rahal.
And as we can see from that shot there, he's caught the sort of second place pack. Second, third, fourth, and fifth are all right there together.
Paul Tracy out nearly 5 seconds now. And Scott Pruitt begins to join into the battle. Greg Moore closes on Pruitt. That'll be a battle for 4th in just a second. Jimmy Vasser still hasn't been able to catch DeFerrin, but the battle between Pruitt and Moore is moving forward and catching both Vasser and DeFerrin. Pruitt right on top of Vasser now, and Moore on the charge. Greg Moore now in position to move, looks to the inside. And that's where the question of passing on an oval, especially a very tight oval like this, comes in.
Well, it does, and of course when you're running with a fast guy and you're fighting for a position, those guys aren't going to be easy to pass, so you've really got to have it together there. See Moore there, take a look to the outside. He's trying to size it up, and don't forget these guys are all trying to feel what the car's doing in the traffic. You see right there, he went to the outside. Now he dropped back a little bit. Obviously the disturbed air affected him. Now he's going to have to get his momentum back up and run him down again.
2nd through 5th all right together on the course as Paul Tracy and his Penske powered by Mercedes pulls away. There's DeFerrin, Vasser, Pruitt, and Moore all tight on the racetrack.
Paul, it looks like that's kind of the comfortable gap to run to the next car. And as we saw, Moore gets up close, makes an attempt at it, then he loses some ground. And I'm not so sure that that air is not disturbing him enough that he's having to back off when he gets behind that car.
And that's been part of the concern here that the drivers has expressed in looking at the challenge of this course, is that you can kind of get up there, but then the straightaway ends and you can't really get by.
That's right. And this track is interesting. It's 1.5 miles, so it's not a super speedway. As you see, everybody's running their short track wings. Those are the bigger wings on the front, bigger wings on the back. Not what you'll see at the Michigan 500, the USA 500, or the Indianapolis 500. The track is tight enough that they've got to have that downforce, but they run it at a minimum amount.
So the interval that Tracy has as a lead over the field begins to close down. Reason for that mostly is they are now already encountering traffic of slower cars. You saw DeFerrin and Pruitt moving through, but look at Greg Moore. Moore climbing on the back of Pruitt, moves to the outside. Blocked for the moment, and now he's passed.
What a great move there. Really set up by traffic, but Greg really was very bold there. Made a really strong move and moved Scott down.
That was Blundell that actually contributed to that. And now Rahal, Unser Jr. as they battle. This is a battle for 7th. Unser Jr. making great strides here. Started in 13th. Of course, he's always said he's not the world's greatest qualifier. He makes it up during the race. Tracy begins to stretch a lead out once again. Over on the backstretch. And Little Al is able to put some traffic between him and his pursuers for the moment. Back looking at second place. And look at what they have to contend with.
As usual on an oval, the great racing is when they get into the traffic, and your car has to work in the traffic to be able to win this race. And look at Greg Moore. He's right up there on Jimmy now.
So the fight now very definitely underway before a full house here, despite the threat of rain and in fact rain. Still working their way down through traffic. Master with Greg Moore charging. Boy, look at the sweep to the inside here.
And Greg Moore just lost about 3 spots right there. And you know what? That was all set up by traffic.
Yeah, and it brought the yellow out as well. So the yellow flies. No indication of an incident involving a car. Report is that Mauricio Gugelmin spun coming off at 2. But Danny, he kept going, right? There he is.
Yeah, he looks like he spun and got away with it.
So Mauricio Gugelmin brings out the yellow with a spin, keeps it off the wall, go in the pits, look for some fresh tires, and fairly quickly we should be back to racing. We'll be right back. Racing complex here. The But One airship and its Eye in the Sky camera are proud to bring you these pictures from more than 1,000 feet up above the Homestead Motorsports complex. Well, we should come back to green flag. Very shortly here, but first let's go to Gary Gerald.
Paul, they work at the back of the Pac West Hollywood car driven by Mauricio Gugelmin. They initially brought a spare rear wing to the edge of the wall, thought they were going to try to replace it, but apparently a problem down there around the gearbox cover, as Danny indicated, unable to make that change. So Mauricio unbuckled, climbed out. His day, disappointedly, is now totally complete.
What would that have done to the gearbox?
Well, it wouldn't have done anything probably to the gearbox, but the wing is mounted to the back of the gearbox, and if it tweaked that plate on the back of the gearbox, even putting another wing on there wouldn't fix it. The mount was broken.
Let's go back to Gary.
And now a word from Mauricio. What happened, Mo?
Well, my car was very loose after that next start, and I lost coming out of 1. Luckily, I just brushed the wall with the rear wing, but we damaged the mounting of the rear wing, so I can't carry on.
Very, very frustrating, I know, as they get set to go green racing. What, the conditions good as you got those few laps after the long delay?
The car felt a little bit looser. I don't know if the circuit is looser too, but at least it's not raining now.
Thanks, Mo. Mauricio Gugelmin out, Jack.
Gary, very quickly, we see Al Unser Jr. getting very racy, an indication as to why. Richard Buck, his crew chief, says, we're going to try and make this thing in one stop. They've been playing with the boost.
Oh, well, that's going to make it interesting as they come back to green flag. Paul Tracy leads them around. DeFerrin has to move around some slower traffic to separate himself from his pursuers. To try to make this in one stop now, 76 to go. Seems like a stretch.
Well, you got 150 miles. That means you got to make 75 miles on a tank. But I'm not trying to correct you there, Jack. Ooh, a little dodgy move there. Did you see those two guys almost get together? Dropped little Al right back, right there.
And we're
Robbie
back.
got through, but it was close for little Al.
Back yellow once again. Al's front wing will be the yellow.
Yeah, they actually did touch. That little move cost him his front wing. Yep, that might have dropped Al's chances right there to do it on one stop, because he's going to have to stop now and get that wing fixed to be able to run. And just one other thing, Jack, on the boost, they don't actually turn the boost down. What they're doing is they're adjusting the fuel mixture, and they go from 100% to 98%, 96, 94, 92, something like that. They tend to keep the boost in the same place, just turn the mixture down so they're flowing a little less.
Here it is, Al Unser Jr. trying to maneuver in traffic. That's Carlos Guerrero right there. And he swept down across the front.
Well, when you're running in traffic like that, it's pretty hard to, you know, he couldn't stay up there in the gray. He had to come down a little bit onto the track, and unfortunately, Al was trying to sneak through.
And Guerrero will have to come in and pick up a tire as a result of that. Let's go to Jack.
And Al Unser Jr. has lost the entire right side, the right front wing. The crew will go to work, and Danny Sullivan, needless to say, I should know better. That is indeed what I meant, not the boost, the fuel metering. That's where the radio conversation has been, going from 12 o'clock to 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. But right now, the crew is having a great deal of difficulty getting the actual attachment off the front wing nose cone section. They're working with an air wrench, trying to dislodge it, and it could be that maybe when he had that contact, it stripped some of them, because they are taking an inordinately long period of time to make this switch. One of the great things about these Penske cars is this is the type of stuff that's pre-engineered into them. To make quick changes like this on this nose cone, they've accomplished it. They're going to finish it now in just a couple of seconds.
Well, they're probably getting a little bit of help there from Paul Tracy, who was probably ordered to slow it down a little bit to give him enough time to stay on the lead lap. But the problem is that nose cone is designed, and structurally it's supposed to be very strong for an impact. So you see all those little nuts and bolts on there trying to hold that deal on there. Little Al, by the way, is getting back out, but he does not have the wing on, so he's trying to beat the pace car out, get back around, come back in the pits, and get another lap. Jack?
Danny, that's exactly what happened. They weren't able to get the nose cone seated. There's a notching system in it. They moved it back up in there. It looked like the bolts were actually going to take hold. They didn't. So now he had to go out without a nose cone. No problem, because it's under caution, but they're going to have to reattach it, bring them back onto pit road.
Well, there is a problem, because they're going to go green in one lap. So that'll be a problem for Little Al.
All right, so Al Unser Jr., as they're getting ready to go back to green, will have to come in and get that nose wing properly attached, and then he'll join the action. Setting back to green flag racing. Paul Tracy is the leader. Gilles de Perrin runs in second place, but Jimmy Vasser is really trying to reel him in. As they came back to green, two cars were called in for violations. One of them, Greg Moore, for a yellow violation, and Carlos Guerrero for a blend line violation. They were both assessed stop-and-go penalties. Paul Tracy is the leader, 69 laps to go. And again, Paul Tracy is able to move out. The center of focus remains here at second place as Jimmy Vasser tries to overhaul Gilles de Perrin.
Paul, I think one of the things we're seeing here is all the excitement, and the outcome of this race from second back seems to be going to happen depending on how they get through traffic. Paul doesn't have enough pressure on him to really be worried about how he gets through or get under another car, but these guys are fighting for position when they get in those big traffic jams, and the positions are changing quite drastically.
Well, the order is Paul Tracy, Gilles de Perrin, Jimmy Vasser, Scott Pruitt, Robbie Gordon. Nothing changes there. Then Rahal, Ribeiro, Fittipaldi, Herta, and Alex Zanardi now sits in 10th place. Moore back on the track after his penalty.
And we've seen two of our champions and two of the most experienced guys and two of the favorites for the championship both have problems in traffic and lose a nose.
Yeah, I think one of the things interesting about the international coverage is that at some of the shops that build these cars, like Penske at Poole, England, they actually get together in the shop and watch the race. You can bet the pencils came out when there was a suggestion that maybe that didn't fit exactly right there. And that nose cone, they'll take a hard look at that one. Jimmy Vasser. His car has the bright yellow roll bar to distinguish it from his teammate Alex Zanardi. And traffic, as always, on short ovals becomes the issue. Grab the gear.
It looked as if Jimmy Vasser was maybe changing gear there, which you don't normally do on an oval. Normally you have two top gears where when you're running in traffic you run one with a little less RPM, but I'm not so sure he didn't go down into that gear to get a jump off of the corner to pass that slower car so he didn't lose ground on Gilles de Perrin.
Let's just ride with him and see what he's doing. I'll tell you what, watch how close he'll get to the wall on some of these corners.
Yeah, I watched Jimmy through practice and it's amazing how much he's right up there getting some dust up right before he goes into the corner.
There, maybe just for traffic?
It could have been because he was coming up on a back marker. He might have been running that taller gear to try to conserve fuel to make it a one stop, and realized he had those other two guys behind him. He needed to snatch the lower gear to get a runoff.
63 laps to go. Jack, are they thinking about pit stops?
Well, Paul, according to Paul Tracy's crew, they are put a window out of lap 87 or 88, trying to stretch the fuel mileage to there. But by my calculations, guys, that would force them to have to maybe do a splash and go if this thing stays green.
We just finished lap 71 for the leader, Paul Tracy, and you can see that now with traffic being Tracy's concern, the lead has been whittled down, and DeFerrin is now just 1.4 seconds back.
He dropped off quite a bit on his lap speed, as we saw. It could have been traffic, and he could have been required to turn the fuel mixture down to conserve a little fuel.
We've crossed the halfway point of the race, so should we have any more rain, and let me say it's not expected, but should we, this is an official race now. Paul Tracy, the leader. DeFerrin, Vassar, Pruitt, Gordon. There's DeFerrin, that bright yellow car. And look, he's able to move out again. Moves around traffic just behind them. Greg Moore trying to carve his way back up through this field after that penalty. He runs in 16th place, and he is on the fly. Now some traffic ahead. Battle for second heats up.
And Paul Tracy's already gotten by that traffic.
You can see Paul now starts to pull out. He had 1.5 of a margin, now out to 3.3. Scott Goodyear just ahead. DeFerrin's around him.
That was a pretty costly move there for Jimmy Vassar. You have to back off going into a corner. You see how Scott Pruitt's now right up there behind him.
Pruitt's right there. Moore is right there, though Moore is not part of the fight.
You'd never know it by the way he's driving.
Report from race control is that they are keeping an eye on the front wing of Al Unser's car. Report that the wing is wobbling a bit. Moore moves out around Goodyear, again not part of the fight.
I think probably for Greg Moore, having gone a lap down with that stop and go, he's anxious to get back to the front to see if he can get that lap back.
Well, and there's a good example of the loss of momentum, too, as Pruitt tried to dive in there, couldn't get it done, had to brush the brakes, and as a result, he's lost speed for a lap or two. Robbie Gordon rides in fifth. Rahal trying on Gordon. Bobby Rahal up. Can he get it away from Gordon? He does. Bobby Rahal moves into fifth place.
And you saw out there how it looks like he's pulled away so much, and it makes it look like he's that much faster. It's not. It's that Robbie had to lift there. Bobby carried his speed in, and all that momentum was lost on Robbie, and he loses that much ground.
Jack Arute, race control's been watching Little Al's wing. What's the story?
And just about the time that you were talking about race control, one of the IndyCar officials came to Richard Buck, the crew chief for Al Unser Jr., and notified him as well. Now, Richard Buck says that they were able to tighten both of those nuts up so that the wing should not be wobbling. But he has gone back to the toolbox, gotten the tool necessary to retighten it if they have to come in. And he's also, guys, has assigned one of his crew members to watch the wing down the front straightaway to see if the wobbling continues. They haven't been able to see it yet.
On board second place, Jill DeFerrin right now. He's past Hiro Matsushita. And still trying to focus. About 6 seconds, which is about a straightaway up ahead, and try and catch the leader, Paul Tracy. But look, in that last lap, once again, as they flash past the line, traffic makes such a critical difference on a short oval.
It still looks like Paul's got quite a bit in hand. He looks comfortable with it, but he's probably safely weaving his way through traffic. He doesn't want to make any mistakes with a car that's handling this good.
As Greg Moore continues to stay up at the front, he has been able to move up 2 positions, getting around Goodyear and Johansson, and now runs 14th. Physically positioned on the track right behind third place Jimmy Vasser, and creating a bit of a buffer back to Jimmy from Jimmy Vasser to Scott Pruitt. Now Vasser closing on DeFerrin, fight for second.
And I'll tell you what's going through Jill DeFerrin's mind is, one, he's trying to run down Paul Tracy. He wants to stay in touch with him so he can have a run later in the race. But he's got to be worried about Jimmy Vasser. He's right behind him. Look at this. He's going to make a move on him right here.
Vasser tries to the inside. Little move by DeFerrin keeps him from getting down there. Which I guess brings up what's legal, what isn't, what's blocking.
Well, in that case, he had been held a little bit by a slower car. And, you know, he didn't want to lose. He lost the momentum, and he didn't want to lose the spot.
Yellow for debris on the circuit. The leaders decide this is the time to hit the pits with 82 laps complete. So the leaders are in. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Paul Tracy, this is a little bit early for what Tracy and the team had hoped to do to make it at least a window possible for going and making this a one-stop race. You can see the tires have been changed. The thing that takes the most time is the fuel. Let's go to Gary.
Jill DeFerrin is in, and we're going to find out right now if that shortened hose can save them any time. But there's a little bit of a problem at the rear getting a tire on. Fueling is complete. Now they're away. Got to stop at 14 seconds on the nose.
Well, the yellow is for contact. Whoa, look at Jimmy. You don't want to lose any time there. They come out of the pits 1, 2, 3, so they'll all be back together as we're ready to go back green once again. The yellow is for contact between Andre Ribeiro and Robbie Gordon. Both cars continuing on, though.
You know, it looked like Paul Tracy had a little problem getting out of the pits because Jill DeFerrin came out and almost ran up the back of him. So did Jimmy. It was almost like he had trouble getting the gear or something.
And again, the Tracy decision is for brand new tires.
Well, I think this is that he's feeling very comfortable and confident with the car, but he's going back into the pits. He's coming back into the pits. He obviously had a problem when he went out.
Right back in then.
This doesn't look good. He's coming in awful slow, and those guys are over the wall. They don't look real anxious.
And look at this. How did this happen? Zanardi under yellow, and we have no idea how this occurred.
No, but that's substantial damage.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, guys, you saw in that pit stop that when Paul Tracy put the car into gear, he began to pull away. He went up through the gearbox. The only problem is he got stuck in second gear. It's a sequential gearbox. They're trying to isolate the problem right now, but this is indeed costly for Team Penske and Paul Tracy.
Well, Alex Zanardi, with substantial damage, sits down on the road into the pits, and here's what caused it. Look at that wheel.
Look at that. He's lost a left rear, it looked like. He's got no control at that stage. Yeah, the left rear is completely gone. If that was right after a pit stop, obviously they didn't get the nut on tight enough, and he just, first time he gets to the corner, just pulls away.
And there's the villain in this, as Zanardi with damage to the back end and Paul Tracy out of the car.
They obviously have, if he's out of the car, then Penske's can't fix it. It's a major problem because they'd be working on that car if it was something easy and get him back out to at least have a chance at some points.
Well, when we started, we were talking about the combinations and how they will work and what the problems may be. Here's one of those potential examples.
Yeah, but this is non-Penske like. Usually they don't have a problem with the gearbox. They've been running that gearbox for a while. It shouldn't have been a problem. But let me tell you what he's going through right now. When you're that hooked up and when you've got the field covered like that and you're as dominant as he has, to have something like a gearbox break, I mean, he's crushed. In one way, he's happy because he was showing the field what he could do, but he's destroyed.
Shades of Eddie Sachs at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, kicking his tire down as he heads back to the pits. Zanardi is now the reason for the yellow. We'll be back after this message. Zanardi's car in the pits. We're still under yellow, Jackaroo.
And Paul, it would not be too tough to say that this should have been Paul Tracy's race. The drive line let you down.
Yeah, something went wrong in the gearbox, and it's a disappointment for the whole Marlboro team. I mean, we showed we were the class of the field all weekend, and it's frustrating, but you know, we learned from it, I guess, and we'll try to find out what the problem is and then go down to Brazil and hopefully have another good race.
But what about the mindset for someone like Paul Tracy? You know, you've always been such a comer. You've always looked forward to the beginning of seasons, and it seems like you're like that Peanuts character with a dark cloud over your head, and it doesn't seem to go away until we get in the middle of the season.
I hope we can get rid of it. I mean, it's a tough way. I mean, I think we showed what this team is capable of today, and I think, you know, I think there's some greener pastures over at the next race.
You can answer some questions for us before we drop the green flag. Passing was a question mark. Give it a grade.
Well, I think everybody that when we were coming up on guys and lapping guys, they were being pretty fair. But I mean, there was a few groups, and you know, but you were able to get by, but it was pretty touchy.
Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Jack, more concerns about moisture. There have been some spits of rain, at least here toward pit out, and the new leader of this race is Gilles de Ferran. His crew anxiously standing here on the wall. We have 133 laps scheduled. We've got 89 complete according to the scoreboard that we can see from our vantage point here along pit road. But now this helps extend what could have been a precarious window toward making the distance on the fuel that they took on during this yellow flag. So you watch the skies, you watch the telemetry equipment, and make sure that you got enough fuel, and you hope we're going to get a green here shortly.
And Jim Hall watches his driver, Gilles de Ferran, who is now the leader of the race. You're on board with Jimmy Vasser. That's de Ferran just ahead. Vasser in second, and now this whole battle that has been a second place battle is so much more meaningful because it is at the front of the field. Now, during the yellow, which started for a spin and contact between Robbie Gordon and Andre Ribeiro, and left Andre with a damage to the front wing, and then they continued the yellow because of some rain, and that's when Zanardi, coming out of the pits, lost the left rear, spun and got into the wall, and they had to clear the track there. Zanardi, of course, looked as if he was just fine and was walking toward the hospital last we checked with Dr. Terry Trammell, who is the IndyCar medical director. They still have some equipment out on the track, blowing the track down to make sure that what rain was there is now gone, and if any sand or debris, occasionally you'll get a blow of sand come over the wall from the backside of the racetrack, and that will cause a real problem as they head into 3, so they'll check that as well. So while we have some moisture, you can see the windshield wipers on the safety vehicle. They are going to extend the yellow a bit longer. So Gilles de Ferran will be the leader of the race with 89 laps of 133 complete after Paul Tracy retires while in the lead. As Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami under yellow, the top cars are all nose to tail here. De Ferran, the bright yellow car, then Vasser, then Pruitt, then Ray Hall, then Gordon, top 5, all right together when they come back to green.
I got to tell you, if I was Gilles de Ferran right now, I'd be praying for it to rain. Just want to dump it because we're past the 50% mark. He wants this race to end right now. He doesn't want those 5 guys or 4 guys behind him racing with this kind of conditions. He wants that win right now.
When they go back green, they'll assess some penalties to Krosnoff, Blundell, and to Raul Boisel, all for passing the pace car. We'll try and find out more about that. Let's go to Jack.
Well, the man that calls the shots for Patrick Racing and Scott Pruitt, the man in 3rd place, is right here, Jim McGee. And Jim, can you handle the Hondas?
Well, you know, we got a really good race car here, and I think the tires of Firestones are really a little superior right now. We're close on the power. We just need a break. And if we're in traffic like we are, we may get that break we need. The traffic is the only way to pass there.
That was a big question mark for many of the teams. They knew what the tire performance was going to be during the course of practice and time trials, but in traffic and in race conditions, what's your read been so far?
No, the car's really good in traffic, and you know, you just got to be at the right place, make the right move, and we may be able to come up with something good.
Paul, you seem to hear that all the time from a third-place finisher.
What I think is interesting is the answer that traffic is how you pass here.
That's right, and we've seen so much of that. We've seen these guys, they get an advantage, they lose an advantage, all to do with traffic. If you don't get that guy at the right place at the right time, if you get him going into the corner and have to back off and you got a car a little ways behind you, he gets a run on and he's got the advantage going down the straight.
The drying equipment still out on the track. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Out here, Paul, and Team Target with Chip Ganassi once again, and it's kind of mixed emotions for you, Chip. You lose Zanardi after a nice run that had him solidly in the top 10. Let's start first with Jimmy Vasser, though, in a position now to challenge for the lead. What's your fuel situation, first of all?
Well, we're fine till the end, Gary. I just checked with the fuel guys on Jimmy's team. They said they were fine.
Now, they made a slight change on the setup of the car, I understand, on that last stop. Has he responded as to how did it improve the handling of the car?
Well, it's a little hard to tell on the yellow here yet, but should be okay.
Now, in terms of Zanardi, your thoughts? I mean, I know you're disappointed because you lose him here as that wheel comes off, but it looked like he did a terrific job in his oval debut.
Guy was doing a great job the whole day. I mean, what can you say? Started 14th or something. We had him up to about 8th or 7th, I think, when it went on the yellow. And we just had a little mess up in the pits, and nobody's fault but our own that he's out of the race. It wasn't his fault at all.
Okay, thanks, Chip. Jack?
Gary, we've talked about traffic. We've talked about reduced downforce. Under this caution, let's see if we can put it in layman's terms again. The rules changes this year, especially for this specific track, have accounted for a 28% loss in downforce. Now, tire technology and new designs have brought that curve back up to about equal speed-wise. But creating that downforce, the engineers of these cars have had to make some changes. So now when they talk about how a car performs in traffic, a lot of the drivers have said what they try to do in the corners to get a better run is to literally move out away from a car. They can't get real close, and what do they want to do? They want to get one side or the other out from behind the wind created by the car in front of them. Why do they want to do that? They want to take advantage, if they can't use full downforce because of the dirty air behind a car, get at least a half a wing out there and create some downforce. They need the run off the corner. That's also why you may see once in a while a fast car diving into a corner, putting two wheels down below into the yellow area, trying to get a run on a slower car and pass him.
Well, we've had a yellow punctuated afternoon here at the Homestead Motorsports Complex as Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami. We are under yellow now while they try to dry the track. Rain has been a problem throughout the entire weekend, raining out qualifying yesterday. Paul Tracy led for a considerable distance, and then mechanical failure took him out, and that's put Jill DeFerrin in the lead, but all the top 5 are right together. Coming up next will be the Payne Weber College basketball. That's North Carolina and Duke. Here are the top 12. The first 6 led by DeFerrin now, and remember the first 5 right together. Emerson and Christian Fittipaldi will be battling one another when they come back. Christian Fittipaldi currently sits in 7th place, followed by Brian Herta, and then Stefan Johansson, Adrian Fernandez, Raul Boisel, and Scott Goodyear. Checking the track now to see, it looks like they're going to get pretty close to getting this race back underway. The equipment is off. Gary Gerald?
Paul, we've just had a rather spirited conversation down here at Pit Out involving Barry Green along with Billy Camphausen, who leads the officials on pit road. And there was the dispute, I believe, was whether or not Raul passed the safety car. Barry's been talking here. I don't know if we can get an opportunity to find it. Barry, did you get any satisfaction in your conversation with Billy Camphausen?
They're saying we passed the pace car in turn 3 when the yellow came out. We might have gone by it, but we dropped back alongside the pace car until the blend line in turn 4.
And so what is the bottom line now? Are they going to bring you in?
The bottom line is they say they're going to bring us in. I mean, very disappointed, really. A bad call.
Well, you can see the emotion running a little heated here. They're currently in the 11th spot, but they'll fall back down the ladder as they'll have to make a stop and go when we go green.
Danny, how do they look at that? If they drop back and get in line?
Well, he said something there that I didn't fully understand. He said he pulled back level with the car, and then when they got to the blend line, he moved again. Did that mean he moved past him? He must have, because I think if he had dropped in behind the pace car and stayed there, they would not have called it. I think he must have gone ahead and passed him.
The penalty also affecting Jeff Krosnoff and Mark Blundell. And they still have the dryers on the track.
And don't forget, in a position like this, 11th place is quite a few points. They only, well, 2 points. They have points down to 12th place. So this is all about the championship. You want to get those points. You don't want to sacrifice those. We're late in the race. They might call the race because of the weather. They may not. But he doesn't have much of a chance to get back into that points position.
Exactly as you suggested at starting, though, just how critical all of the points are, even a few down at the bottom of the order. They've just given the order to all the safety vehicles that have been drying the track to come back off the track so that we can go racing again. Let's go to Jack.
Remember at the end of the season, Paul, Carl Hogan and Bobby Rahal decided to part and go their separate ways, and a lot of people were saying, gee, we'll really miss Carl Hogan. Well, he's back, and he's back with Emerson Fittipaldi and the Latin American team. And Carl, Emerson hasn't really been in the hunt, but all of a sudden, lo and behold, as we get to the final third of the race, he's right up there.
Well, we've been conserving fuel for the first part of the race, and we're trying to be very conservative, and now that we've done that, now we can turn up the wick. He's been moving up slowly. We've been very patient, and I told him if he's patient and focused, I think we'll win this race.
When were the seeds for this union between you, Roger Penske, and Emerson Fittipaldi? When were they first sown?
I think when Bobby Rahal said he wanted to go his own way, I had to make my choice, and Roger and I talked at that point, and it just sort of went on from there. So it was sort of late in the season, but, you know, Roger and I have been friends and associates for a long time, so it didn't take too long to put it together, really.
And, Paul, I think you could agree with me. This is one guy that we never wanted to see leave IndyCar racing, and it's good to have him back.
Again, to the basketball fans, the Payne Weber College basketball, North Carolina versus Duke. That'll be coming up right after this race. In the meantime, enjoy some IndyCar racing. We're in Homestead, Florida, just south of Miami, as Toyota presents the Grand Prix of Miami, the Indy cars. Jill DeFerrin is leading the field around. There he is, that bright yellow car in front, and the indication is that they will go green in one lap. Right behind him, though, the red and yellow car is Jimmy Vasser, and they have been battling the entire way. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, we've tracked out Alex Zanardi. We talked to you during the rain delay. You didn't want to see us until this race was over, but here we are. It has to be an incredible disappointment to have a wheel come off under those circumstances when you'd worked so hard to get into the top 10.
You know, my main disappointment is because the old team, the Target Chip Ganassi Racing, did a great job, and I was driving one of the best cars I ever driven in my career, I tell you. I was just flying. This was just the beginning, and I could push even more. And when I had nobody in front of me, I could lap the same time as the leaders. So the car was perfect, and it's just a shame, you know. I couldn't handle the car with 3 wheels in turn 3, so I went into the wall.
Well, nonetheless, I know it's disappointing. Terrific oval track debut. We're looking for great things down the line. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Paul?
Even if he hadn't hit the wall, we don't allow 3-wheel racing in IndyCar. One lap to go. Well, Jimmy, he's been busy in the starter's stand. Boy, the pressure's really on those guys, too, trying to get a nice, smooth start and then have to run into all of this trouble.
Yeah, and now at the beginning of the race, of course, the leader is not at the front of the pack. And he's going to be very anxious. We don't have that many laps left in the race. I believe we got 32 left. And he's going to be trying to get a gap between he and Jimmy Vasser. And as we've said and as we've seen, traffic plays a very important part. And he's got some fast cars in front of him. And right in front of him, of course, is Raul Boesel, who's going to be black flagged and have to go in the pits right away.
Also, Krosnoff is in there. He'll be black flagged as well. The pace comes up. Pace car is off. The Toyota Supra pace car. And boy, look at a move under traffic as we come back to the green flag. Vasser is able to make the move. It
doesn't matter whether he passes before the start finish on a restart. The minute the track goes green. No matter where you are on the track, you can pass. So if he was 15th, he could pass coming into turn 4 if he wanted to.
Boy, and that's just what Jimmy is all about. He is a totally focused racer, and he really thinks this kind of stuff out as he jumped right around to Farron and picks up the lead.
And now he's working his way through traffic very well, and he's really going to work at trying to get that gap, whereas Gilles de Ferran's got to work his way through traffic, and he's got a bigger gap.
On board with Robbie Gordon, that's Stefan Johansson just ahead. They're all in the middle of this fight as the leaders come through. Here's Rahal once again challenging on Gordon.
And you saw there that Robbie had to lift off because of that slower car that he was trying to lap, and Bobby got the run on him. Traffic is playing a very important part, and in fact, Bobby's in front of Scott Pruitt.
Raul Boisel has responded to a stop-and-go penalty. Now it's Vassar, de Ferran, Rahal, Pruitt, and Robbie Gordon. The top 5 changing quickly here in the traffic and in the closing laps with 29 to go. And here comes Pruitt back on Rahal. Rahal tries to hold him off, gets to the corner first.
I got to tell you, Paul, this is some great racing. First race out, not very many laps to go. We got about 29 laps to go, and these guys are all fighting for position and points.
Rahal, Pruitt, Gordon, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Vassar is the leader. He jumped de Ferran on the start. De Ferran hasn't been able to catch up, but Vassar has begun to pull away.
And Jimmy's leading by 2.6 seconds. That's a nice little cushion, and he's going to want to extend that. And I think that's because he's got a clean track in front of him. He's not fighting with the traffic.
We're extending here, of course, to cover the end of this race. And then college basketball up next, North Carolina and Duke. Look at this, back and forth across the track. What do you think? Does that come under the blocking rule?
Well,
it's the second move, not the first, right?
It's not the first, but don't forget, we're late in the race, and these guys are battling. There's 3 of them in there, and they're battling for 3rd place and 3rd place in the championship.
Rahal
battle tough.
Rahal darts low, gets around Stefan Johansson, as does the remainder of the group. Pruitt and Gordon. Christian Fittipaldi has gotten around his uncle and now runs in 6th place. Then Emerson, Herta, Fernandez, Johansson. Boy, what a fight this is.
And look at this. They're also not only battling with themselves, they've got to contend with traffic. And I think that's what you see Bobby when he moves down on that car. He's been blocked coming off the corner. He doesn't want to lose the position.
Emerson Fittipaldi just came into the pits. Battle continues. 3rd, 4th, 5th. Leader is still Vassar.
Now that move I did not understand there about Fernandez. He moved down low and virtually blocked Bobby, and those guys are running for 3rd spot.
Again, the overhead view from the Bud 1 airship. All right together there. Onto the front stretch.
Past Fernandez, who of course I think is running in about 8th spot at the moment, but they need to clear that so that they can have a clean track in front of them and battle in clear air.
But then again, Fernandez, who is in fact an 8th, has his own concerns, and part of it is Stefan Johansson, who is right in the middle of this as well. And Rahal just offers a comment to Fernandez, shaking his fist, saying, "Let us through."
I don't really think that Adrian should be racing him at that position, but also he doesn't want to go a lap down to those guys either.
Well, and again, we're talking points.
Yep. But he's safely in front of those guys, out of those guys' race. And you, of course, don't know what he's being told on the radio where the guy in 9th place is.
Well, just back behind this battle is Johansson.
And look who's coming through there. Who's obviously got a great car. Is Greg Moore is just knifing his way through there.
Greg Moore, with that move, now comes into the top 10 in 9th place. Lap off the lead, but he just got around Al Unser Jr. to get up into that 9th position. There's Junior.
Obviously, Bobby's comment to Fernandez made some difference. He slipped by him. But see, that's wrong.
Bobby
right
did, but look at Gordon and Pruitt.
Yeah,
and finally, whoa.
And that's just wrong there. He shouldn't be going down the middle. Stay in your line. If a guy's faster, he should be able to get by. He's not racing those guys for position.
So now they'll rejoin the battle. Ray Hall is going to play with Moore. I guess he's not exactly sure where Moore is. He can let him go.
Well, his crew should be telling him where he is, but don't forget, he might want to keep Moore behind him so he has a cushion to those other two guys back there. He'd like to have Moore between he and Pruitt and Robbie Gordon.
Moore tries on both sides, finally is around.
Moore is probably the fastest car on the track at the moment. He is knifing through there.
We'll try to track some of these laps that Greg Moore is turning. They are pretty spectacular. Certainly equal width, if not faster than the leaders. Basketball coming up right after the IndyCar race here. So stay with us. We're going to see, I think, what is going to be an incredible finish. Vassar has a lead now by 6.7 seconds. Look at Rahal once again as he tries to hold off the charge. Pruitt this time.
And Pruitt actually ended up using Bobby's teammate Brian Herta to help him through that corner. And Pruitt's on the move. He's running awful fast at the moment.
So now Pruitt in third place. His next goal is to Farron. While this man, Robbie Gordon's goal, is Rahal. So it's Vassar to Farron, Pruitt, Rahal, and Gordon. And Greg Moore continues to carve forward. He's up to 7th place now, behind Christian Fittipaldi. Once again, Herta.
Whoa,
very definitely part of the action. Whoa, I don't think he saw him.
And look who's right in there in the mix is Little Al.
Al Unser Jr. coming through. He's in 9th, a lap off the lead. But that's what makes the short track so fascinating.
Paul, I don't know about you. This race started off a little bit slow, but it's awful exciting right now with 17 laps to go.
Oh, it's paying us back here at the end.
These guys are racing. They felt the cars out. They got plenty of fuel on board. Their tires are in good shape, and there's points at stake. They're really racing. Did you see that dust come up from Robbie right there? He had it up very high.
Gordon, Rahal battle for 4th. Everything ahead of it static right now.
You know what's a great part right now? Is that we're at the racing stage right now. The pits are done. Everybody's done out there, provided there's no problem. The tires are on, the fuel's on, everything's going, and it's down to the drivers, and they're just out there racing, and those teams are all sitting there watching the action.
But Jimmy Vassar, who was denied last year a victory, originally with a protest over Al Unser Jr., was given the win of the race at Portland. But then it was taken away from him and given back to Al Unser Jr. on appeal. So his first and only IndyCar win has yet to come. But take a look. Vassar's lead being whittled away.
I think we've really got to pay attention to that too, Paul. Of course, it could be just that he gets caught in traffic. And don't forget that Gilles de Ferran has to come to that same traffic.
Yeah, that lead is timed actually at the start-finish line. And so sometimes it can be deceptive, but we can see about a straightaway back. De Ferran is coming.
He's coming, but he's battling right now with Greg Moore. And Jimmy will be in this traffic. He's coming up on a slower car right now.
Greg Moore continuing to try to move up through the field. Runs 7th, wants to get around to Farron.
Don't forget, Greg Moore's probably feeling good. His car's handling great. He's one of the fastest cars out there. And if by chance he could get back on that lead lap, you never know. If Fiella comes out late, he's still on. He can get back that lap that he lost early on.
I'll tell you what, Moore is incredible. By the way, this display at the top of the screen, which I personally think is very helpful, Part of that is driven by EDS scoring, the official scoring of IndyCar. Transponders on the race cars transmitting to antennas down in the track, and they can discriminate down to 1/10,000th of a second. Our thanks to EDS for the help they give us.
And unfortunately, in qualifying, I think I've been beat out by a couple of positions by that great scoring 10,000th of a second.
Wish we were back to the stopwatches. Here's the leader, Vassar, 4.5 ahead. As he approaches the start-finish line this time, be 10 laps to go. And that becomes a bit of a no man's land. If you have a disabled car and you pull it off the edge, unless it's really in danger, they're not going to go yellow for it.
That's right.
They're going to run to the end. Back at Homestead as we continue to watch Gil de Ferran trying to reel in the leader of the race, Jimmy Vassar. Doesn't seem like it is possible right now. Vassar is able to maintain that interval. The question is going to be, can Scott Pruitt, who is just behind de Ferran in that predominantly white car, will he be able to close in and grab off second place? Bobby Rahal is fourth. Robbie Gordon is fifth. Interval widens out.
I'll tell you what, it's got to be a great feeling inside of Jimmy Vassar's helmet right now. He's got to be feeling great. He's got a little bit of a cushion out there. The nerves are pumping, his adrenaline is flowing, and he knows that he's not far away from his first win if he can just maintain that gap and not make any mistakes.
Interesting, his path through racing and into this team as the second driver, and then they realized how really good he was. Something that a lot of Californians have known for years because he's raced all over that state, and of course is a veteran of IndyCar. 6 laps to go.
And it just goes to show you, if you keep plugging away out there, you can do it. Even look at what happened to Michael early on in the race, lost a nose, went a lap down. He's been out there. He's up to you know, up to 10th place now 9th place, excuse me. That's 4 points. That helps him for his championship hopes.
Rahal still chasing Gordon. That interval closing too. Margin slips. That's just the kind of thing can take a win away from you too. You get caught in traffic, really have to slow down. De Ferran will be on top of you right now.
Yeah, and they've got the momentum going, but Jimmy's doing a good job. And don't forget, there's 4 laps to go. Not only do they have to catch him, they then got to pass him.
So now 4 to go.
And race car drivers tend to get very tough to pass when they get close to that checkered flag.
Those cars can become wide.
Very wide.
There's de Ferran.
Don't forget, de Ferran still got to deal with that traffic.
Pruitt looking to the inside, has to back out of it. And Rahal's closing in now on Pruitt. And Gordon.
And Robbie
Look at
Gordon.
this. Look at Robbie and Rahal.
Whoa.
Rahal gets back around Gordon. Rahal's back to 4th.
And he's closed up on Scott Pruitt and de Ferran. Look, they're all making a run right here.
They're all right together now.
Traffic is still playing a very important part. And look at Bobby.
Bobby Rahal looks wide. Does he get caught with this one?
Yes. See, he got the momentum off of that first turn, and then he got bogged down. And look at Robbie Gordon's now down there. He's going to get it back.
Robbie Gordon comes flying by on the inside. He gets the position back from Rahal. Well,
great racing. Great racing.
And there's the white flag. 1 to go. It looks like this one is going to belong to Vassar, but who's second, third, fourth, and fifth is going to be is just about anybody's guess. As Jimmy Vassar on the backstretch working on his first win. We're watching the battle for second. They're all together now.
Scott Pruitt's going down on the inside, but I don't think Gilles going to let him have any more than a look.
That is not Gordon just ahead of de Ferran. That is Scott Goodyear. Identical cars. Here's the checkered flag as Jimmy Vassar takes the win. De Ferran, who goes in second, and I think it's a dead heat.
I think Robbie might have got him.
He just may have.
He may have got him.
So there's Joe Montana, who was the leader at the start driving the pace car. Now Jimmy Vassar is the winner here today. His very first IndyCar win and the third win for Firestone since their return, a second for Honda. Coming up next, we'll have basketball, the Payne-Weber College basketball featuring North Carolina and Duke.
It looks like Chip Ganassi's gamble or decisions in the offseason really paid off for that Honda and Firestone.
Here's that run for third place as they come across the line. And Danny, you called it right. Gordon got him.
Well, it was awful close. It depends on whether they mark it on the front of that white line or the back of that white line. That's about as close. We went on a photo finish like a horse race here.
That's when you want to take that transponder and just kick it a little bit forward in the car, because that's where it's measured, is wherever that radio transmitter is located in the car. Interestingly enough, all in the same position. The officials already thought of that one. So the first race is done. Here's the unofficial results, the order of the finish, and the first step has been taken now in the run to the championship in the IndyCar. Next race in 2 weeks in Rio. Congratulations to Jimmy Vasser.